Hi, everybody, and welcome to another edition of GLP's 10 out of 10. And today we have with us KC Wilkerson. Growing up in Texas, KC's lead into the entertainment industry started when he decided he wanted to be a rock star. When he realized that learning and playing music wasn't really his thing, KC turned to his next passions of art and architecture, which eventually led him to start his career as a scenic artist. But that all changed after going to see the Police in concert one night, and lighting was what he wanted to do from that point on. After graduating college in a technical theater program, he moved to California and got a job at Disney as a stagehand. Now, if nothing else, you can say that KC's career has seen some variety as he's designed for plays, musicals, live concerts, club installations, architectural, crossover architainment, and large-scale spectaculars. Now, having been with Disney for just over 27 years, he's risen through the ranks and now has the title of Principal Lighting Designer for Disney Parks Live Entertainment at Disneyland Resort. He and his team are responsible for the spectaculars, the shows, the parades, and much more besides in both California and Hawaii. Throughout his long stint at Disney, KC has also taken every opportunity to light shows in his spare time, and has racked up a long list of credits at venues across Southern California and beyond, including a production of Wicked in a cemetery. KC is the recipient of 4 Ovation Awards, 3 Stage Scene LA Awards, 2 LA Drama Critics Circle Awards, and a Garland Award, amongst many others. Welcome, KC Wilkerson.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you so much for joining us. Sure. We've got our 10 questions for you. So starting with the first one and winding back to the beginning, what was your first show as a designer?
My first, this is funny, my first actual lighting design was for a children's theater production of Beauty and the Beast. Not Disney's Beauty and the Beast, obviously. Should have known then, right? And it was cast with performers and puppets, which was interesting, right? So that we had a large articulated beast. I had to use a plot, so it was full of conventionals, and it had already been hung and focused and gelled for another show. That luckily I was the master electrician on, so I already knew the rig going in. Right. But I was at least able to add a few specials. And like in the haze of my memory, I recall being pleased with the way it looked, but I think I'm probably glad there's no pictures and video from
of all of the things that you've produced and been involved with and created. I'm sure so many of them just went absolutely smoothly. But perhaps have you maybe had a couple of kind of spinal tap or sort of embarrassing moments where things didn't quite go according to plan?
So I designed a production of The Who's Tommy for a local theater here in Southern California. And I had decided that since it had been a while since I programmed, I wanted to program the show as well. And we'd been all the way through technical rehearsal. I think we were in our second to last dress, and we had finished and I was saving the show. And while I was saving, I noticed the console was just making this weird little noise. And I decided, you know what, whatever, because it got to the end of it and said file saved, right? Great. Right. I think we know where this is going. So I come in for the next night, which is our final dress, and I pop the show in, load show, yes, and the show is not there. And so I go to the backup and it's not there. And I go to the backup of the backup and it's not there. And I go to the fourth backup and it's not there. All 900 and however many cues. And so after I recovered from my heart attack for 10 seconds, I went to the director and I was like, can I talk to you for a minute? And I told him what had happened. And he said, okay, do we need to cancel final dress? I was like, oh yes. And so basically what happened was for the next 24 hours, the director, the AD, and myself stayed up and in the theater rebuilding the show from Q1. And while we were doing that, the AD was at his laptop with data recovery software. Ultimately, after about 12 hours, really, he came through. And we had one disk that a good portion of the data, like an amazingly good portion of the data, could be recovered.
Right. Wow.
But I had to rewrite probably 20 to 25 cues ultimately in the end, which is pretty amazing.
Phenomenal. What great. That's a great learning story. Wow. Fantastic. Obviously you've done so much over the years. What would you say is the best piece of advice that anyone's ever given you, professionally or otherwise?
It had occurred in the context of a production meeting. It was
Okay.
earlier in my career at Disney. We were working on a fireworks show that had a bunch of different other elements. And the creative director had pitched this amazing effect involving fire. But as we went through development, it became clearer and clearer that time, money, and technology were not going to make it achievable at that time.
Okay.
And so the production team we're in a project update with the vice president of entertainment at the time. And he quietly listened to each person's perspective. This was very collaborative. And once everyone finished speaking, he was silent for a moment. And then he said, so what is the story about at this moment? And all of us just sat there for a minute, because we'd been working so hard on this one thing that we had sort of lost sight that there were other ideas to consider that could support the narrative and still deliver the effect that we were looking for.
Okay.
And that question inspired us to expand our thinking, right? That was over 20 years ago. And it's a question that I ask myself practically on every show when I get stuck.
Fantastic. Okay. So again, you've done a lot, and 27 years in one company, you
Right.
do so many different shows and everything, as well as your outside stuff. But professionally, what would you say is your proudest achievement so far?
I think if I had to nail it down to one thing, it's that I've been able to provide opportunities for others, whether that's designers or programmers. Through a lot of the work that I do, I get to work with a lot of people who are early in their career, right? They're in their early 20s, they're entering the business. And we're able to provide some opportunities, whether it's been through direct mentoring, whether it's been through just, giving somebody advice based on my experience, or connecting an up and coming programmer with an established designer.
Right.
I think that's probably the thing that I'm most proud of.
Well, there we go. Something very much to be proud of.
Yeah.
When you're not, on site or in Hawaii or one of the other
Sure.
locations, what do you normally do in your downtime?
A lot of things. I'm an avid photographer, which is I find to be fairly common amongst lighting designers.
Yeah.
During the pandemic, I've moved more into creating digital art. Art that I can do at my desk,
Okay.
whether that's with Photoshop, Procreate, Illustrator, which I had to take a bunch of classes in because it was kicking my butt, and is still not the easiest program for me. But I've really taken the time during this last year to jump in and try to learn new software. I walk 15 miles a week, do some strength training a couple days a week. I'm the cook in the family, so cooking relaxes me. Like it's a total de-stressor.
Okay.
Rest and relaxation. We love to go, throughout Southern California. Maui is a destination for us. Can't wait to go back to Europe.
Right.
I'm really waiting for that. But I think probably the thing that I miss doing the most is a lot of what we do in our downtime, which is go to see shows and concerts.
Perfect. There we go. That's brilliant. Obviously, you work in these different locations.
Yep.
You've traveled around the world and done so many different things. You mentioned, museums and other kinds of things.
Yeah.
You've had projects going on with. Would you say that out of all the places you've worked, would you say that there's a best venue at all?
Personally, I love outdoor amphitheaters.
Okay.
Like I love sheds and concert venues.
Mhm.
I loved the old, the Irvine Meadows Amphitheater, may it rest in peace, here in Southern California. And I loved Meriwether Post Pavilion in Maryland. It's set, or at least at the time, I don't know what it looks like now. It's set in like 40 acres of woodland. It just had this great vibe to it.
Fantastic. Musically, you were to go through lockdown, really only having one artist or one album that you could keep with you. Who would that be?
During the pandemic, it was actually Coldplay, which surprises me a little bit.
Right.
And I think it's probably because at the beginning of the pandemic, we watched was the stadium show that they did for Head Full of Dreams.
Okay.
I think was the name of the album, from Sao Paulo.
Mm.
And it's brilliant. I mean, like it's an amazing show. And I'd never been a big fan before that, but that made me want to explore their catalog more deeply.
Okay.
And during the quarantine, I also had a significant health scare that required some extensive treatments. So I found a lot of, I think, positivity and optimism and inspiration in Chris Martin's lyrics.
Mm-hmm.
So my Coldplay playlist has gotten a thorough workout over the last year or so. And I wouldn't have said that a couple of years ago. I'd sort of, I mean, no offense to any of the guys, but I just wasn't a big fan.
Right.
And now I can definitely really appreciate what they bring to the table.
Yeah, fantastic. Fantastic. We'll take that. Coldplay it is. Now, if you were able to travel back in time and go and visit the teenage Casey and offer one piece of advice, what would that be?
You know, way back then, many of the theater people that I was surrounded by were about theater only, right? It was, you know, you were just going to be a theater practitioner.
Okay.
Not necessarily a lighting designer that can, you know, work across all genres. And it really took me a while to realize that opportunities for those of us who work backstage are everywhere, right? I mean,
right.
I mean, there's concerts and clubs and festivals and cruise ships and theme parks and museums and restaurant and retail and other entertainment. The list just sort of goes on and on, depending on what area backstage you work in. So I think what I would say to myself is, open your eyes, that there's more out there than you think there is, and that you don't have to dream about being a concert LD. Just find a band and get to work.
Right. Go out there.
That's what I would say.
Awesome. Go.
And ditch the mullet. Ditch the mullet.
Great. Ditch the mullet. Always remember, ditch the mullet. That's the first.
Yes.
That's number one. There we go. Right. That's brilliant advice on both counts. Okay. So our next question, if you were able to sit down for a cup of coffee with any one person at all, either living or past, who would that be?
Gustav Eiffel.
Okay.
Architect and creator of many things, but obviously the Eiffel Tower, probably first and foremost. I have a photograph that's hanging on the wall above my desk at work, and it's a composite of the Eiffel Tower through all the stages of construction.
Right.
And what I find fascinating is that he was convinced that it was going to be an epic, iconic landmark, right?
Okay.
And everyone else who saw it, everyone else in Paris who saw it, derided it as being a grotesque monstrosity and that it would defile the face of Paris. There were protests about how ugly it was, and it took quite a while for public opinion to change. And I think there's an important lesson there, and that's to stick with your vision, right? And that's what that photograph reminds me of. So yeah, sitting down for Gustav to pick his brain for a few hours would be a treat.
Right. To understand.
But there is also 1,000 other people on that list that I would want to, you know, if I have the opportunity to pick brains, I'm not stopping at one.
No. It is a tough question. It really is. Okay. We get to our final question.
Oh, okay.
That's right. It doesn't take long. So the final question is, once we're finished with the interview, your phone's going to ring and it's going to be Team USA. And they're calling you up for the Olympics. Now, it could be for the summer games or it could be for the winter games. But the question is, what's the sport they're going to call you up for? What would you like to have a go at?
Well, they have a wrong number because anyone who has seen me do anything physical will testify that the sporting gene is quite clearly a recessive one in me. But if I had to choose, it'd be doing the Summer Olympics.
Okay.
And I would say it would be in swimming or diving.
All
I
right.
did a lot of that when I was a kid. So I will be happy to compete, but the team should know that I'm going to disappoint them deeply.
Right. Fantastic. There we go. High diver. KC Wilkerson. You're on the team. There we go.
Ta-da.
Casey, this has been absolutely fantastic. Thank you so much. Thanks for finding the time for this.
Thank you for having me.
Insights have been just absolutely brilliant. They really have.
Thank you. Thank you.
Obviously, we look forward to meeting up again in person when the opportunity allows, and hopefully, that won't be too long now.
It seems like we're so close, doesn't it?
Does. Fingers crossed for a continued good recovery.
Yes, indeed.
Thank you once again, and we'll see you soon.
Thanks, I appreciate it.
All right, bye-bye.